Hi, welcome to Like Ike. I'm Dennis Weiss. I work for Eagle Communications, and I get to spend time in the Eisenhower Presidential Library Museum with good people like the two I've got over here. Don Hammett, Executive Director.
Hello.
Kind of run this show here. Today, especially, you have to run this show. Pam Sanfilippo, the keeper of all good things, and shows it with a smile every time I see her. So we have a special topic today that will be close to every patriot's heart, and that is Dwight David Eisenhower and patriotism. Absolutely. As a word, as a deed, and as a feeling. And you caused this. So as we were on camera on our town show, you talked about the patriotism and how important it was to Dwight David Eisenhower. So we're going to expand that topic today. Okay. And you get to lead.
All right. Well, so you're right. You and I were talking about Dwight and what a patriot he was, and what that can tell us how to live our lives now. And so Pam and I pulled several of Dwight's quotes, just to sort of put it into context, his thoughts into context. So this book is actually really important. It was edited by Dan Holt, our own Dan Holt, and Jim Lyeroff. Do you remember Jim? I
sure do.
Okay, so
used to find him hanging out around here.
I haven't met Jim, but you know, this is a great thing that Dan and Jim were able to do for us. Okay. So this is Eisenhower's pre-war diaries that they edited, and as I was flipping through it the other day, I found this article, which was printed in the Dickinson County News in Abilene in 1909.
The Student in Politics.
When Dwight was 19, and so Ike was asked to speak at this dinner, and he spoke on the student in politics. He was teaching his listeners about voting and how their future was going to be sort of as a voter, as an important member of society. And Pam pointed out something really important this morning, that he was only talking about men voting, which I didn't pick up on. But
really?
He's all the men voting.
Yes, for a man after voting. It's pretty hard to misread that.
Do you know why that is?
Yes, I do, but you're going to explain it.
Okay. Women did not have the vote in 1909, and so that wouldn't be for another 11 years.
So the Dwight David Eisenhower, so 1909, men only voting, to suburban America and the prosperity in America that the world has never seen before in the middle class. That's the span of his life. Those statements are on each end of his life. An amazing time in history.
So in this speech, he's talking about the two-party system and learning about what your party stands for and voting. He mentions that you'll probably vote the way your parents do, or your father, because of the time period. But that sort of is in response to where you are in life and what's important to your family and your livelihood.
So that's a shout out to my 3 daughters. You vote the way your dad does, well, we're good. No, it's not.
I didn't say that.
No, that's because you don't have my 3 daughters. You see, I have them. Isn't it, if we get too serious too quick, we're all going to be weeping before this is over.
We've discussed that.
So it's my job to inject what passes for humor.
Right.
Okay? So, and that is. But it is so true in so many things in life. You emulate your parents, you listen, you follow until you have your feet on your own ground.
Well, when I came across this in Dan Holt's book, it was important to me. It showed to me a beginning of his concept of citizenship and patriotism. So he's already talking at 19 how important it is to vote and vote your conscience and learn about what the parties are standing for.
So I have a 17-year-old son. You both have met him. He's one of the most patriotic people I know. Maybe my influence had something to do with that, but I think his passion is informed by his own desires of his heart. But it does cause decisions to be different than your run-of-the-mill person who hasn't thought anything about America as a political entity that we owe something to. So let's define patriotism a bit. Not the official, but what we think. So I'll start us off. Okay, so using my son, patriotism to him will mean loyalty to the country, the symbol of our country, and the service there too, in ways that it needs. And that defines his view of patriotism, and I think I would agree.
I agree also, and it, you know, I have service members in my family, and so service to the country is important to me as part of my definition.
Pam?
I would agree completely, and I think Eisenhower would say the same thing, that citizenship itself is not the only means, or that doesn't bestow on us patriotism, that responsible citizenship is
a
demonstrated
reflection of patriotism.
Yes, yeah.
One's a motivator and one's a result. Okay, good citizenship, in my view of the world, can be driven by one's patriotic view of the country in which one lives. You don't have a reason to serve unless you have a core belief. I mean, I'd be happy to come over and rake your lawn, but I'm pretty sure that, you know, it could be done better by yourself. or your husband or the guy next door, frankly, because I'm not that good at raking lawns. But I can serve where I can. In fact, I've always welcomed this opportunity to do this little thing. You know, that's really fun for me. But I think it's essential that we get the word of Eisenhower out in the world, and every time I leave here, I have a warm feeling that I've served my country well.
This is actually an excellent segue to one of his stories in At Ease.
Okay.
That we've decided you get to read.
No, wait a minute. You didn't pass this by the camera guy, did you? That I get to read on camera. You got a good shot of that, David. Okay.
This is the first edition, and the dust cover's missing, but we thought it was interesting to bring the first edition.
At Ease, stories I tell to friends. So you're bestowing upon me an honor of a friend. So where does this story start?
So this is Dwight writing about joining the military academy.
And you want me to start at that paragraph? Or just
highlight.
All right, okay, the highlight says, but when we raised our right hands and repeated the official oath, there was no confusion. A feeling came over me that the expression, the United States of America, would now and henceforth mean something different than it had ever had before.
So you can stop there. Isn't that extraordinarily compelling?
That's a change in a moment of a man's character because he made a decision. That's what that is. I don't know about you, but goosebumps just traversed the length of my body there.
That's why we had you read it.
We thought that would be better for you to do.
From here on, it would be the nation I would be serving, not myself. Suddenly, the flag itself meant something. Maybe we should read that more often.
We can make T-shirts.
We can make T-shirts. Dwight David Eisenhower, extraordinary individual. We are kind of intimately involved in that understanding. Our job with the camera is to present that view to the world. Why Like Ike? He's an extraordinary individual, and today we're talking about why his patriotism is important and how it informed the rest of his life. He said in the quote I read that he would never think the same or feel the same, thus think the same about his country, and including its flag behind us.
Well, Pam might want to tell us about the flag.
Okay.
Okay, well, I can do that. First, I have one comment. I think it also speaks to his belief that it's not just the words, it's his actions too. It was changing the way he was going to act in the future, and so he wasn't just telling other people how to be patriotic.
Right.
He demonstrated it every day of his life. So we received this flag in 1969 as a donation, and it's actually a flag that flew over Camp Colt in 1918 when Lieutenant Colonel Eisenhower was commander of that camp.
Was teaching people how to be tankers with farm trucks with wooden guns on them and one Renault tank.
Right, and when the flag was presented, he actually gave a speech in 1918 to the 330th Battalion.
Which is also in Dan Holt's book.
Yes.
And Pam's going to read it for us. or something.
Maybe.
Or are we just looking at it for entertainment?
Well, let's see.
I think she pulled excerpts from it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if this is my copy that I have marked up. No, it's not. Oh, okay.
There we have it.
It's rather short, but he's presenting this to the troops and basically says, you know, I don't need to tell you about the ideals and principles for which this flag has unfalteringly stood. But then he says, goes on to say that it symbolizes in the uttermost parts of the earth, it stands for justice, freedom, and the right. And then he's kind of sharing with the soldiers as they're getting ready to go off to World War I, that they then become representatives of that flag throughout the world when they serve, and kind of encouraging them to remember that and never bring any stain on the flag.
It's a thought that needs to be voiced more, right? These people of extraordinary ability and extraordinary character, we need to speak their words more. All of us need to hear those things. All of us need to think on those things, and hopefully the majority of us make a right decision about those things. Really does matter. Patriotism, I remember, you know, I'm a child of the 70s, you see, so I remember the time when patriotism wasn't the cool thing to be, wasn't the thing that young people wanted on their collars. Fortunately, I was raised in a place of world we were too slow and behind, or whatever way you want to call it, to know, and it didn't matter. We looked to the example of the men who had brought freedom home from World War II and left it in America, and one of those was Dwight David Eisenhower. But gosh, there's so much comes from a proper view of who we are, what we are, and how we got here that Ike can help us with.
And the fascinating story about the flag itself is it was there at Camp Cold. Eisenhower himself gave it to the chaplain at the time, Dr. Leland, and it was after Dr. Leland's death, who lived to be 101 years old, that in 1969 his widow donated the flag back here to the library. So.
It was important to him all those years.
Exactly, and important to her for it to come back to Eisenhower.
Well, that's what we do. Frankly, it's what you do. I just get to drift in here once in a while, but it's as a collective, it's what we do. But it's all just a reflection of what he did.
It is really sort of a magical museum moment where we have the words and then we also have the object. So to share that story with the object is really the magic moment in a museum.
As I look around of what we did today, and we're going to film, we filmed the program prior, we're going to film another one in this work on Like Ike. It's such always a pleasure because there's not a single bad thing to talk about. This is all, these are all good things. So patriotism, the service of Dwight David Eisenhower, I think everybody knows about. But the words you read, those are passion words.
They are.
Those are not just, you know, serve words or push-up words or sit-up words or march 25 miles with 100 pounds on your back words. Those are words that come from the heart through the head. It's important.
Well, he also wrote this book, which isn't going to show up on camera very well.
The Eisenhower Essays.
This is a list of essays that Eisenhower wrote after the presidency, and he wrote them for Reader's Digest. And in one, it's called the Thoughts for Young Americans.
Okay.
And he's giving information to young Americans about how to be good citizens. He's saying to inform yourself. So educate yourself about the issues. Make sure you know what's going on. And then he writes, make sure you understand your idealism. Make sure you understand the motivations of the causes that you get behind. He's saying to know your obligations of citizenship. Develop moral courage. So stand up for what's right and be courageous about that. And I thought that this was really a compelling article, that he took the moment to teach young people how to be good Americans, because that was important to him.
Yeah. Know the causes, the reasons for the causes you stand behind. we live in a world where information is instantly available to anybody, anywhere. I used the word information. I didn't use the word knowledge because knowledge implies that it's right, factual or true. This is information explosion, not necessarily knowledge explosion. We have a lot of things in front of us, but without the discernment that Dwight David Eisenhower is calling young people to in that sentence, we're not enhancing our knowledge. We're just overloading our information storage device.
So he's telling us, don't just believe it. Actually do some research, educate yourself.
Test. I think one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was question everything, test everything, prove most of the things, and then get behind what you want to get behind. That's not much different than what he said.
No, no. And he really did believe, of course, as most of us do, that the youth are our future, and this importance of recognizing that they need to grow and form their opinions. He was invited to speak to the Boy Scout Jamboree at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, of all places, on July 4th, 1950.
That's a fairly patriotic place and a fairly patriotic day.
Pretty much, pretty much so. And that speech I use a lot with Boy Scout programs and with other school groups to have them understand Eisenhower's perspective on this. He starts off with the Pledge of Allegiance, ends with the Pledge of Allegiance, calls forth all of the history that's involved at Valley Forge, but then just expresses to them about patriotism. And he says, among ourselves, we do not speak openly and frankly as often as we should of patriotism, love of country. It is not that we fear the jeering of the smart aleck. Possibly we forget that men grow in stature only as they daily rededicate themselves to a noble faith. More likely, we thoughtlessly assume our blessings of liberty to be indestructible.
There's two things there that one inspires and one chills, doesn't it? Dwight David Eisenhower is urging us to dedicate ourselves to the understanding that patriotism drives service, and then cautioning us that our freedoms that we take so for granted lay upon a foundation of the patriotic men who left them and women who left them for us.
And that it could be fleeting if we don't protect that.
Right. And it is. Look around. America is such a wonderful place. Those of us who live here, this is normal to us. This is not the world. This is not the rest of the world. We are that shining experiment in freedom that's lasted over 200 years is still a shining experiment in freedom.
Yes, it's really hard to pick out just a few quotes from him because his whole life was just full of.
So I have a question. I think you said it earlier, something phrase on the line of how then shall we live, now that we understand patriotism, now that we understand. With Eisenhower, how did it materially change his life? Where did it change his life? What do we see? It's kind of obvious to us, but it may not be to the people behind the camera. Somebody jump on that and speak to that. We can read and observe he was patriotic. How did it change him? How can we prove that he was patriotic? Not just read his words, but how can we prove with his life that he was a true patriot to his country?
You or me? I'll do it first.
Okay.
I think that his patriotism shows through with his sense of duty and service. You know, he felt very sincerely about his service to his community, and that was through the military and then again as a public servant, as the president. But even afterwards, he served his community by writing these essays to help people educate them or change their attitudes or show them perhaps a different point of view. He served his community every day.
Pam?
I would agree, and it wasn't just, we all can't go into the military service of our country. He recognized that every citizen has a role to play in making this a better place to live, and no matter what your job is in life, career.
So we've pointed this out before, and I'm moving the gloves so Don doesn't take them and whack me with it. We've pointed out before how important Mamie Eisenhower was to the Eisenhower world. So Mamie's patriotism is equal and on equal display, but
Absolutely.
it reflects in a different mirror. And you have to look to see it, but it's there. And how important it is to us as a country that these two people lived their lives the way they did and left it here for us to see and experience. I think the value of that cannot be calculated or counted, but it sure can be appreciated.
Yes.
And we're out of time.
Already?
Okay.
Like that.
It's always fast.
It's always fast.
Sure
So, Ike and Patriotism, gosh, would love to have you send some things to us. Email goes everywhere, you know. You can reach these people very easily. You can reach me easily. You have a story, come tell us about it. Let us know. We'd love to put it into our collective knowledge about the Eisenhower years.
That's true. Thank you.
Okay.
For saying that.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching Why Like Ike. I'm Dennis Weiss. I work for Eagle Communications. This is Dawn Hammett. She's Executive Director of the Eisenhower Presidential Library, Museum, and Boyhood Home. Pam Sanfilippo, who does so many things, I cannot list a title, but one of my favorites is informs our young people about the things we talked about today. We're wishing you a great day.